what is this shadow docket, and why has it become so relevant of late?
So the term was coined by Professor Will Baude, who is not, by the way, a flaming liberal. The shadow docket sounds like a nefarious term for what Justice Alito would say is just the court's emergency docket. And the court has always had an emergency docket because there's executions, right? There's all sorts of last minute things that have to be decided at the 11th hour. The term the shadow docket is in reference to the growing number of cases that are not emergencies that are hustled onto that docket as a way to avoid little things like briefing and oral arguments and meaningful, written opinions. And a lot of really big cases in the last few years have been decided on the shadow docket. So some of the, religious organizations that were challenging COVID limits on how many people could attend services decided on the shadow docket. The eviction moratorium decided on the shadow docket. Remain in Mexico decided on the shadow docket. SB 8, this Texas vigilante bill, decided on the shadow docket.
How does something get on the shadow docket? Does it require...
It's just the posture. It's just brought as a sort of emergency. This needs to be decided right now. I should note that the Trump administration was very, very adept at kind of constructing, this is an emergency. We have to bypass all the intermediate steps and get it before the court as an emergency. And in fairness, some of these things really are emergencies. But when they are not fully litigated, when there's no record, when there's nothing that judges who are supposed to apply this as doctrine. I mean, one of the things that was really alarming about the COVID cases was that the instruction on the next COVID case would be like, well, why don't you just reference our last shadow docket order? Oh, except it's 3 lines. And so judges had no idea how to even apply the reasoning, which is the one thing the Supreme Court's supposed to be doing. And I think that there's a way in which when an order pops up at midnight, and it's sometimes not even is it unsigned, you don't actually even know what the vote was. It's not even clear unless it's listed who's dissenting.
So sometimes that's not published. The vote is not published.
Yeah, no, I mean, it can just be like, we did this. And I guess I would say this, there is a fight going on. And this time last year, the fight was like in high tilt. And people like Professor Vladeck were saying, like, this is, show your work. The one thing you're supposed to be doing, Supreme Court. And if what you're doing is just showing us the last line of an order on something that affects everyone, like the Remain in Mexico or the eviction moratorium or COVID orders, tell us how you got to where you got and let both sides be heard. And Justice Alito gave a speech where he just smacked back, not just at academics who were criticizing the court, but at journalists who were criticizing the court. And I think that I want to be fair and say the court needs to be able to decide issues on an emergency basis. I think what Professor Vladeck would say, and you should just interview him because he's much better on this than I am, but what he would say is it's the number of cases that are appearing there. It's the import of the cases. These are huge existential issues. And we are now really in the midst of a huge national conversation about public confidence in the court, and the court has the lowest approval ratings it's ever had. One of the factors is when the court is like beavering away at midnight and handing down 3-sentence orders that nobody understands how it's applied in the future, or even who wrote it or who signed it, that is the opposite of transparency, and it's part of why I think the public feels that the court is unaccountable.